This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you live and around the world from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, the Paranormal Talk Radio Network, the Starcom Radio Network, Digital Broadcast Network, and Digital Satellite Network. Worldwide, toll-free 800-610-7035. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And you can listen to the X-Zone, whether you want to listen to the best of, or if you'd like to listen to the live show at www.xzoneradiotv.com. Just a programming note, X-Zone Nation, that on Wednesday, November the 11th, we are going to be continuing our debate between Michael Horn and Stanton Friedman when it comes to the Billy Meyer case. And as I said, that is going to be rather interesting because Stanton has had a month and a half to review the information that Michael Horn has sent him, as well as members of the Billy Meyer group who have been following Billy all these years. They've sent him information as well, and it's going to be interesting to hear what Stanton has come up with when it comes to the Billy Meyer group. X-Zone Nation, my guest this hour is no stranger to anyone who watches TV when it comes to UFOs, listens to radio when it comes to UFOs, or newspaper articles. I'm talking about Nick Pope. And Nick Pope worked for the British government for 21 years and spent 3 years of his government career running the Military of Defense's UFO project. He now works as a journalist and a broadcaster specializing in the unexplained, conspiracy theories, fringe science, and the scientific search for extraterrestrial life. Joining me now is Nick Pope. And Nick, welcome back to the X-Zone. Always great having you on the show, sir.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
Nick, what's new as far as you are concerned when it comes to proving beyond the shadow of the doubt that UFOs are real and that extraterrestrials are here on this planet?
Well, I think there's a lot of things going on at the moment. We live in exciting times. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people have made predictions about disclosure and when all this is going to come to a head. My own feeling is that we've got a lot of things going on that might just push us over the line. And one thing in particular, and this is more to do with hard science than with ufology, but it's Russian billionaire Yuri Milner and his Breakthrough Listen initiative. And he's recently said that he's going to be putting literally $100 million into the search for alien life. And, you know, to me, it doesn't matter who gets there first, who finds it, who discovers it, who discloses it. The important thing is that it happens. And I think actually, in a way, if it happens through science, it's more likely to be universally accepted. And so for this reason, I think this is very interesting and important news.
But what is so different about the Listen Project than what SETI has been doing for years already?
Well, I think I call it SETI Plus.
Okay.
SETI has always been running around holding out the begging bowl. Paul Allen gave them some funding, of course, and they've gotten some from elsewhere, but this is orders of magnitude above and beyond. And I think the technology has gotten away from them a little in recent years. And what I think Yuri Milner has said is, look, you people are going to be left behind unless you get back in the game. Well, you know, they thought they'd been handed their coat and shown the door, but no, suddenly they are back in the game. And I think, money talks in this business. Well, now we can have a whole debate about the rights and wrongs of that, but money does talk, and I think he's going to be able to buy them telescope time, and if that's not good enough, build new and more powerful telescopes, and critically, of course, the computer processing power that will enable them to sift through the vast amounts of data and actually say, have we got the answer all along? Has it been right under our noses, but have we missed it?
I often wonder if the search for extraterrestrial intelligence by using radio telescopes is the wrong way to go about it. Because how do we know that what the extraterrestrials may be using can actually be detected by our radio telescopes?
Well, it's a fascinating question, because I think it does get to the heart of this. I think the glib response to that is, we can only take an anthropocentric view on this, and therefore we can really only sort of think as we think, and think, well, what are the logical things to do? What do we see out there in the cosmos that maybe is a model for how one might want to communicate? And radio would seem to fit the bill. But certainly, I mean, you're right to be skeptical in a way. The late, great counterculture philosopher Terence McKenna once famously said about SETI, he said that to scan the cosmos expectantly for a radio signal was as culture-bound an assumption as searching the cosmos for a good Italian restaurant. Now, I mean, it was a witty soundbite, but of course he had a point. But then it raises the follow-up question, well, if you're not going to do that, what else are you going to do? They are, of course, looking at things like optical SETI, but it's still essentially the same thing. It's trying to make yourself noticeable. And, of course, it's been interesting that just in the last couple of weeks we've seen this story about alien megastructures and Dyson spheres. If you want to be found, you have to make yourself noticeable. Now, you can either shoot out something very powerful, whether it's light, radio waves or whatever, or you can build something very, very big. But either way, we're talking about engineering projects on stellar and even galactic scales.
If there are all of these UFO reports, Nick, that you have collected, Chris Strutowski up here in Canada, Peter Davenport, the people at MUFON have collected over the years, why would it be so necessary for the ETs to build these megastructures instead of just landing, let's say, on the Front House lawn or the Parliament Hill in Ottawa or Buckingham Palace in the UK and saying, we're here?
Well, firstly, we don't, despite all the good UFO data, we don't really know for sure that that's possible. And if it isn't, these alternative strategies like radio and optical bursts come into play. But even if it were possible, I think, again, it goes to the heart of quite an interesting debate about altruism and whether altruism exists in the wider universe. And the reason I bring that up is because it plays to the question, who does the work in all of this? Now, yes, an advanced extraterrestrial civilization could land on the White House lawn or wherever, and it would put the debate, sort of be absolutely beyond dispute. That's fine. But if the universe fundamentally isn't altruistic, if the sense is that, well, we've got to do some work on this too, it's not just going to be handed to us on a plate, then we may be the ones who have to build the telescopes. We may be the ones, and this upsets Stephen Hawking, but we may be the ones who have to initiate a conversation. So actually, I talk about Yuri Milner and breakthrough listen, and he's used that phrase very deliberately to keep Stephen Hawking on side, but we
Right.
may have to move into breakthrough talk. And it may be that only when we do something sufficiently interesting will contact be made.
Let's take another hypothesis here, Nick. What if the ETs are not like us, carbon-based units? What would happen if the ETs are, let's say, silicone-based units or another type of based units that we cannot communicate with? Like, what guarantee is it that the technology that is being used by extraterrestrials can in fact be detected by technology that is being used by Earth?
There are no guarantees in any of this, but I think we do have to just play the percentage game.
Okay.
Now, interestingly, the question of non-carbon-based life came up in 2010 at two scientific conferences that I attended in the UK, back when I lived there, and these were put on by the Royal Society. And the question was raised, well, what if we are dealing not with carbon-based life, but as you suggested, with silicon-based or something else? Now, firstly, I have to say the consensus was that that would be far more difficult in terms of actually building life that way. But one thing that did come up was the suggestion, and it was best articulated by NASA's former chief historian, Stephen Dick, the suggestion that we might be living in what he termed a largely post-biological universe, and that we might be dealing with machine intelligence. Now, if that's the case, of course, then again, some of the assumptions that we make and some of the assumptions that underpin SETI, like Earth-like planets around sun-like stars, all go out of the window. All bets are off, and machine intelligence clearly could exist in a number of different locations, including the void of interstellar space that would be fatal to biological life of any sort. And this was a really an extension of the idea that we're beginning to discover how difficult, dangerous, expensive space travel really would be for biological life.
Why do you think, after all these years, Nick, I've been doing this show 24 years, and one of the hot topics has always been UFOs, that this topic is still a hot topic? It's bringing on new people into the inquisition of what UFOs are, the existence of UFOs, the cover-ups, the conspiracies. What is really behind it? Is it the search for little green men? Is it the search to see if we're alone in the universe? Or is there another reason why this topic is so popular?
I think there's a couple of things. Firstly, I certainly didn't mean to dismiss all the UFO data. I mean, there's no doubt that over the last 70-odd years, of course, there's been a huge volume of material, some of it not so good, but some of it pretty impressive, built up. And, there's no smoke without fire in any of this. But I think the other thing is that more fundamentally, almost on a philosophical level, questions like, are we alone or not in the universe? And are we being visited? Are other intelligences interacting with us? Are some of the biggest and most profound questions that we can ask ourselves. But not only that, unlike some of these other questions, like does consciousness survive death of the body, which is arguably unknowable in our lifetime, questions like are we alone or not in the cosmos might actually be quite easy to answer. And those answers might be tantalizingly close. And, our technology now may be getting to the point through optical telescopes, radio telescopes, mass spectrometry, where if there are civilizations out there, we are almost within grasp of picking up, detecting their fingerprints, so to speak. Now,
you worked with the British government a number of years. You were the guy in charge of the the Ministry of Defense UFO files. You've talked a lot about your government work on UFOs. How can you discuss any of these topics without violating your security oath or clearance?
Well, my secrecy oath binds me for life. I mean, the fact that I left the MOD in 2006 has no bearing there. But the fortunate point is that the British government is itself now declassifying and releasing huge amounts of information on this subject. And actually, I've been a part of that myself, really as a sort of media spokesperson, having worked on these files. So, I mean, really, I'm not a whistleblower. It's more the fact that the government's releasing these files, and I'm the one that wrote them. So, of course, the government itself accepts that, of course, when the media want somebody to talk about this, what does it all mean? What have we done over the years? What have we concluded? Self-evidently, they would come to me for hopefully some intelligent answers on that. Not sure about that, but I try.
Looking back at your government research, Nick, you've talked a lot about it before, but what mistakes did you make, and what would you do so differently today?
Ooh, well, I think everyone likes to think that they did a good job, and hopefully I had some successes. But I think, yes, inevitably there are some regrets, and I think there's a couple that stand out. Firstly, I inevitably, like a lot of people who've done this job before me, and like a lot of the people who worked on Project Blue Book, which of course was the American equivalent of the job that I did for the British government, I think the temptation was always to investigate UFO sightings on a case-by-case basis. So what I never really got to do, or never really got to do in a way that I would have wanted, was to take that step back, put it all together and say, well, never mind this case-by-case analysis. Look at it holistically. What have we got? What have we, over the decades, amassed on this? What does it tell us? What information do we already have here? And does it help us to any answers? Rather than just, I guess we'd call it firefighting. You're investigating a case, and then another one comes in, and you pick up that one, and then another one comes in, and you're always just trying to play catch up. If you can just take that step back and do a proper intelligence analysis of the data. So I wish I'd done more of that. We had a couple of goes at it, but much of that was actually something that I was involved in setting up, but I was posted to another section by the time it really took off. I think the other mistake that I made, and this was a big one, though in my defense there wasn't much I could do about it, was that I looked at this on a very narrow national basis. Now, my terms of reference constrained me. I only had the authority, the legal authority, to investigate cases within the United Kingdom's air defense region. But in all of this, I think it was fairly quickly obvious to any of us who looked at this that this was not a national issue. It was an international issue. These sightings took place around the world. And yet, our terms of reference constrained us, and we were constantly having to be very, very careful, even picking up the phone and talking to our own defense attaché, say in a foreign embassy. What we were trying to be careful of is that we didn't contradict our own line that we'd pushed with Parliament, media, and the public, was that we were only very peripherally interested in all of this.
Wow. The case you're most often associated, Nick, is the Rendlesham Forest UFO incident. Now, have there been any recent developments in this case?
Well, sorry, the reason I'm laughing is that the answer is yes, and actually, literally today, the news has just broken on Facebook, and the image is probably out there somewhere. But for years, of course, one of the people who was often spoken about, but had never really told his story in anything other than brief sound bites in TV programs, was Colonel Charles Holt,
Right.
The deputy base commander. At the time of this incident, famously went out to debunk it and then became a witness himself. Well, he, over the last few years, and I think he's early to mid-70s now, and he's just gotten, I think, so aggrieved with people mistelling his story, misrepresenting it, falsely trying to write themselves into the story, that he said, look, for once and for all, I'm going to have my say on this. And he's teamed up with a retired British police officer called John Hanson. And he's decided to tell his own story. And literally today, the front cover of that book, which is going to be called simply The Holt Perspective, the front cover image of that book has been posted fairly widely on Facebook. I've got it up on my timeline, and I know it's elsewhere. So this news, needless to say, has I think today set the UFO community. It's set tongues wagging. It's set people thinking, well, what's he going to say? And I know that he's been pretty aggrieved over the years at some of what he sees as bogus information put out there, and he's a real straight shooter. So expect a few reputations to be trampled, expect a few sacred cows to be slaughtered, and watch this space. But it's an interesting and big piece of news that has literally broken today.
Nick, what has been your opinion, or what is your opinion, of the Roswell case of 1947?
Well, Roswell is, funnily enough, I was in New Mexico just last weekend speaking at in Albuquerque at New Hampshire MUFON. And Roswell was kind of, it was still discussed, and people were kicking around various theories and pieces of information. But, the sense that I get with all of this is that people are kind of saying to themselves, look, if we haven't cracked Roswell in, nearly 70 years now,
that's right,
chances are we're not going to. There is some excitement that the 70th anniversary is now not too far away, less than 2 years now, and I know there's talk of big events in the city of Roswell to mark that, and those may or may not take off. I remember the 50th anniversary. I remember the 60th. But again, the feeling was I just got a little bit of the sense of disillusionment with some of this. I got the feeling that some folk in the UFO community were just a little bit Roswelled out, and I think the feeling is that unless some smoking gun suddenly comes to light, maybe things have run their course. And I think they say about wars, don't they? I'm probably going to misquote this, but when the last soldier who fought in any war passes, the whole thing moves from living memory into history, and then ultimately into legend and myth. And I think the same is true with Roswell. All the key players, the main witnesses, anyone with direct, literal, hands-on experience, pretty much everyone has now died. So we're dealing with people who are sort of sons and grandsons and daughters and granddaughters of the people involved, and it all just gets a little bit progressively more removed from the original and much harder. I mean, any cop will tell you, for example, that any crime, you talk about the first, it's the TV show, isn't it? The first 48.
That's right.
And then you'll talk about the surgeons, talk about the golden hour, and all this feeling that unless you can crack something quickly, you won't crack it at all. And I see Roswell slipping away. I don't know what happened.
Let me ask you something, Nick. You were in the military. You're very well versed in protocol, the chain of evidence, the chain of custody. Something that I could never understand when it came to Jesse Marcel. Now, here you've got the base intelligence officer. He goes out to the Brazil farm, picks up all this debris, and instead of maintaining the chain of evidence and bringing this debris right to the Air Force Base and putting it under lock and key, what does he do? He goes home, wakes up his wife and his son, lets them play with this material, and then takes it to the airbase. Now, in my opinion, as a former police officer, as soon as he did that, case over. And yet, he's heralded as a hero. Why?
Well, I think people are people. I think it's this annoying thing called human nature that rears its ugly head in all of this. And and you're probably, as a former cop, equally, if not more frustrated by this. If you look at Rendlesham Forest, what did Jim Penniston do with his police notebook with the sketches of the craft and the symbols on the side and things like that? You took that home too. I mean, sometimes this is what people do, and there's no logical explanation for it. But maybe when people do genuinely encounter something above and beyond something in the standard operating procedures, kind of, I come back to this phrase, all bets are off, and people do behave in funny ways, and people want to share it. I mean, I remember Jesse Jr. Certainly telling me that his father literally woke him up in the middle of the night.
Exactly.
Took him down to the kitchen and then said to his wife and his son, just look at this. You'll never see this again.
All right, stand by, Nick. You and I have to take a commercial break. We'll be right back. Nick Pope is my special guest. www.nickpope.net. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard, Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Starcom Radio Network, Digital Broadcast Network, Paranormal Talk Radio Network. There, I finally got it after all that, and the Digital Satellite Network. I'll be back with Nick Pope. Don't go away. The new nonfiction book, Razor of Madness, is similar to cult movies like Clockwork Orange, Dragon's Tattoo, or The Other Side of Hell. Wayne Morin Jr. and Thomas Lee Howe will expose widespread and systematic deficiencies in this thought-provoking tell-all novel. Mind control rages among scholars in law schools. Human rights are ignored while thought reform and mental manipulation are accepted practices used as behavior modification. Dr. Louis Jolyon West comes to mind. Media and public scrutiny shows that United States mental hospitals are in fact destructive murder industries. Razor of Madness expose novel details this epidemic through an in-depth professional and personal investigation. For decades, there has been a revolving door policy that still releases killers and pedophiles back into society. The maestro of mind control continues to haunt America to this very day. Razor of Madness is available in paperback or as a downloadable ebook at Amazon.com. How would you like to be able to read other people's minds? Well, the next best thing is here. When you know how to read a person's name, you know how the person thinks, feels, and behaves. Each letter in our name holds a key to unlock our true essence. Our name contains both our gifts and challenges in this lifetime. Mnemology science discovers personality secrets hidden in the placement of the letters of our names, including the first and last impression people remember about us. Sharon shows us how to interpret the arrangement of letters as outlined in her book, Know the Name, Know the Person. Sharon Lynn Wyeth created mnemology science after 18 years of research and testing her theories, and has supported thousands of people around the world in understanding themselves and others better. You'll enjoy Sharon's unique teachings as she shares her system to learn the gifts behind your given birth name. Even if you don't like your birth name, there are jewels in this book. If you're thinking of changing your name, ready to name your child, or wanting to get along better with others, this is the book for you. If you'd like to improve your relationships and change your life for the better, get the book today, Know the Name, Know the Person, or visit www.knowthename.com. That's www.knowthename.com.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school, training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
You're a pumpkin.
I was a pumpkin, a big orange pumpkin.
A big orange pumpkin. And were there a lot of children out there?
Not so much.
No? Did you get a lot of candy?
Yeah, I got a lot of candy. Mommy's eating all the chocolate bars.
Well, tell Mommy that's your candy, honey.
Okay.
Tell her.
Stop eating all my chocolate bars, Mommy. Daddy's sick.
Oh, welcome back to the X Zone. Rule number 1, never let your 4-year-old talk to you on air during a radio show. I love the little gal, but she ate the candy. You shouldn't. Well, you all know what I ate when Laura got a hold of me after that interview, bringing the little one on air and the little one yelling, "Stop eating the candy," Daddy said. Wow. That was Halloween, 7 years ago, 8 years ago. My goodness, how time flies when you're having fun. Nick Pope is my special guest, www.nickpope.net. Nick, when it comes to the other UFO cases around the world, you know, Rendlesham is well known. You've got, of course, Roswell. Stevensville, well, that's kind of faded out. Now, in your opinion, what is the case that to you, Nick Pope, with all your experience and having worked with the Ministry of Defense as their UFO guy, is, if any, a smoking gun?
I think Rendlesham Forest is as close as it gets.
Right.
And even there, I don't think we've got enough hard, verifiable data to say this is a sort of, you can take this to the bank, spaceship and hangar smoking gun. But I think in terms of it being a perfect storm of everything that makes a UFO case compelling and verifiable, it's as good as it gets. 3 nights of activity, multiple military witnesses, UFO tracked on radar, UFO leaving physical traces in terms of scorch marks on the trees, indentations in the ground, and radioactivity levels assessed as significantly higher than background. And perhaps most of all, an audit trail of verifiable government documents. I mean, this isn't some sort of MJ-12 situation where half of the people in the UFO field say that it's real and half isn't. You can, whatever you think of Rendlesham, you can go to the government's own website and read the file.
You mentioned MJ-12. Do you believe that they actually existed and that the MJ-12 papers were legitimate?
I don't think the documents were legitimate, but I would be surprised if something like MJ-12 didn't exist. Certainly in my 21 years of government experience, I know that if you're dealing with some really new, difficult problem, what the logical thing that you would do is you would assemble a sort of multidisciplinary team of experts across a number of different fields, probably in a number of different agencies. I mean, if you look at any situation, for example, to do with Iraq and Afghanistan, you see, certainly so far as the UK government is concerned, you see the Ministry of Defence involved, MI5, MI6, government communications headquarters, a number of other organizations. And so it wouldn't surprise me that if any of this were real, that the president would have said, pull together a team, get the best of the best in all the respective fields, and get them to work on this.
With all the computer hacking that's been going on and data breach, especially when it comes to the United States, the Snowden case, or China or Russia breaking into American data banks, would it not be advantageous to a country who is not friendly towards the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and our allies to find the proof that extraterrestrial life is real, or that UFOs have landed, the governments have been in touch and in contact and working with extraterrestrials, and leak this information to the world, thereby casting great doubt with the governments who have said, listen, it doesn't exist?
Absolutely, yes. And if anyone does have that, I'm sure it's the ultimate get out of jail free card. For example, if Snowden had it, I suspect he would have used it, and he would have received a presidential pardon by now.
Yeah.
If Chelsea Manning had it, ditto. So I can only assume that no one has it. And I think in all of this, there's something that people tend to forget. We think sometimes when we read all these stories about data breaches and Snowden and Manning and things, that we live in a society where every secret has leaked and every scandal has come out. And of course we don't. What we're looking at in all of this is the tip of the iceberg. And I know from my 21 years in government, many of which were spent on very highly classified programs, that only a fraction of that material has come out. And most of that simply because it's now been declassified and released. The number of times you have a really highly classified, super secret, for want of a better term, that happens to fall into the lap of a hacker, a whistleblower, or a spy. I mean, it's incredibly rare. Most secrets are successfully kept. And so I think that's what people should remember in all of this.
I use Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky as a model case of how, for example, if the President of the United States cannot have a presidential affair with an intern in the most secure building structure within the United States of America without the entire world knowing about it 6 months later, how the hell are you going to hide a crashed UFO and 3 dead aliens?
That's true, but on the other hand, I go back to my point that many secrets are successfully kept. And of course, if one looks at the history of, say, the Manhattan Project, one has a situation where literally thousands of people were working on something, and yet until the bomb went bang, the cat wasn't out of the bag.
Sure.
If you could forgive me for mixing a few metaphors there. But the same with any number of things. Actually, another good example of this is the breaking of the German Enigma codes during the Second World War.
Yep.
Now, people have a kind of false memory of this, that the moment the war was won in 1945, it was all revealed that, we'd cracked your codes. Not true. Actually, the fact that we cracked those codes remained secret until, I believe, the very late 60s or even the early 70s. Reason being, some embassies around the world were still using those machines or something very much like them. So, of course, we were still successfully reading their mail. So again, I think there's a temptation with this to focus on secrets that leak and kind of then assume that, oh, you can't keep secrets. Well, yes, you can.
But don't forget, Nick, back during the World War II and during the Manhattan Project, there wasn't the internet. There wasn't the ability to actually use the technology that we have today. And if you put today's technological spin on it, would it have been such a great secret? Could that secret have been maintained?
I don't know. It makes it more difficult.
Right.
But I mean, I think with a lot of this, the advantage that we have is that literally, unless you have a spy in your organization, you are dealing with fundamentally decent, honest people who, if they believe it is in their interests in terms of the national well-being to keep a secret, they will keep it. I mean, it is their oath of loyalty.
I understand that, Nick, and I applaud those who do. But you have so many who are coming out now who are claiming that on missions and when working for the government, they have direct knowledge of extraterrestrial contact. They've said that they've seen UFOs and UFO structures on the moon, that various astronauts are coming forward now. So why the change? You know, how come these people who, in my opinion, are breaking their oath to their country are, once again, being heralded as heroes because they're whistleblowers? Can we take what these astronauts and these members of the military and these pilots are saying as the truth? Or are they just looking for a few more minutes of glory?
I think most of these people are truthful, honest, decent people telling what they believe to be a story to the best of their recollection. Now, funnily enough, I was talking to John Alexander about that just this weekend, and he and I think, both came round to the view that if people out there are sitting on this information, one way to clear it up for once and for all would be to do an expanded version of the amnesty that the Secretary of the Air Force offered in relation to Roswell in the 90s. And the authorities could simply turn around and say, because our position is we don't think there is anything to the UFO mystery, if anyone out there is sitting on information relating to this that's classified, you are hereby absolved of your security oath, and you may freely disclose anything you have, and let those people come forward without fear and without any repercussions.
What do you think the city of Roswell, New Mexico would be without having that infamous story of an alleged UFO crashing there in 1947?
Well, I think they'd be a cattle town. I think dairy, as far as I know, is one of their big industries, and
it's in their
fine.
so it's in their best interest to keep this myth alive.
There's some benefit, yes, but I don't think it runs to. I mean, there's a small museum there. There's a conference once a year. But I think if anyone seriously thinks people are raking in millions, they're not.
But you see the pictures of the week-long event, and you've got all these.
Yeah, but that's a 4th of July parade. Yeah. I mean, that would be going ahead anyway.
But it's not with people dressed up, because I don't know of any other 4th of July parade where people dress up like aliens, and it's a carnival atmosphere. So how can anyone take this serious if the townspeople and members of the UFO Club Worldwide, take a carnival attitude on something that they claim to be real?
Well, I think we take a carnival attitude on lots of things. I mean, people like parades, people like waving flags, dressing up, having fun. If it wasn't aliens, they'd probably be dressing up in sort of 1776 revolutionary outfits and things. So
right. But
people are going to do that.
But if it wasn't aliens, there'd be no Mecca for the ufologists to go to. Like, let's face it, Roswell's the Mecca when it comes to UFO existence or believed existence in the United States.
It is, but I think we talked about this earlier. I mean, I think the game's moved on, actually. I don't think we're going to prove Roswell one way or the other. It's on the map, it's in the pop culture, but whether people theme their 4th of July parade with aliens or whether they theme it through something else, that's not going to have a bearing on whether we get disclosure or not.
How close do you think we are to disclosure, Nick?
Oh, touching distance. I think, as I said earlier, I think it will come through science and not a landing on the White House lawn. I think it will come through telescopes, not through declassified government documents. But it's ours is the generation. Ours is the generation that will find out that we're not alone, I'm sure.
Nick, earlier this year there was a lot of talk about the Roswell slides, followed by the revelation that they showed a mummified child. Do you think that damaged ufology?
It damaged ufology seriously for about a week.
That was it?
And then in the UK, we have this marvelous saying that today's newspaper is tomorrow's fish and chip paper. Inevitably, the story moved on, and now most of the people even involved in promoting the Roswell slides are quite happily appearing at other conferences, and everything's been forgiven and forgotten. People have short memories.
Strange.
So, yeah, it damaged things, but life moves on.
As the presidential campaign gears up, Nick, what role, if any, do you think the UFO ET issue might play?
Steve Bassett's trying to make it a big issue and raising it with Hillary Clinton. Hillary, if she has any sense, which clearly she does, is going to, avoid this one like the plague. Yeah. I mean, it's the absolute kiss of death. We saw what happened to Dennis Kucinich's campaign for the Democratic nomination when it was revealed that he'd seen a UFO on Shirley MacLaine's ranch some years ago. So people in the UFO community, like Steve Bassett, will try to push it to the fore, but all the politicians will just make a joke of it and move on.
Steve's been at this a number of years, and do you think he's made any headway? He's had the press conferences. He does, he works at this very hard, and, over the years, I can honestly say I have seen no progress.
Yeah. I like Steve. I mean, hopefully
so do I. Yeah,
considers me a friend, and I've spoken at many of his events. But if I had $1 for every time he'd said, disclosure is just around the corner. Yeah. This is the moment. I mean, disclosure is like tomorrow. It never seems to come.
Listen, as always, whenever you're on the show, time goes by so fast, Nick. Before we go, what do you think What do you think is next for ufology, both in short term and in the longer term?
Well, the British government is declassifying and releasing a few more files. Look out for that later this year, or more likely early next, and I'll be involved in that again as a spokesperson. And, of course, there are a few conferences coming up. Paola Harris is rebooting the famous Laughlin franchise.
Oh, that's great.
That's going ahead in about 3 weeks' time. So, and in fact, Shirley MacLaine, who I was mentioning a moment ago, just tweeted this earlier today. So if you Google Starworks USA Laughlin, you can get details of that conference. And who knows, maybe Shirley MacLaine will drop in. I hope so.
Nick, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Always a great pleasure having you with us here in the X Zone. Keep up the great work, Nick. You're a shining star at the end of a very dark tunnel when it comes to credibility and truth in the UFO world.
Thank you very much.
Take care of yourself, my good friend.
You too.
Exonation, Nick Pope has been our guest this hour. www.nickpope.net. That's www.nickpope.net. Now, I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Speaking about UFOs, don't forget, Wednesday, November the 11th, 8 p.m. until 10 p.m., a rematch between Michael Horn and Stanton Friedman as they get back to discussing and debating the Billy Meyer UFO case. That's Wednesday, December the 11th, from 8 p.m. until 10 p.m. Eastern. Ironically, it's Armistice Day here in Canada. Wow. I wonder if we can put this debate to rest. Do you think that'll ever happen? Do you think we're going to have disclosure this year, next year, the year after? Is it that close? And when it comes to Jesse Marcel, the base intelligence officer who was dispatched to the Brazil farm to pick up what they did not know what it could be, it was thought to be a wreckage of some sort. Why did he bring this stuff back and wake up his son, wake up his wife, instead of bringing this evidence back to his office in the airbase? What did he know? Or was Jesse Marcel part of the hoax that has been perpetrated, in my opinion, on the world since that day in 1947, where a UFO was said to have crashed in Roswell, New Mexico, with the retrieval of 3 extraterrestrials? I don't know. As soon as I realized and found out that Marcel had brought what was classified then as proof or evidence to his house and let his son and his wife play with this evidence, all his credibility has gone out the door. Do I think Roswell really happened? Yeah, something crashed. Was it a UFO? Nope. Were there 3 dead aliens? Nope. That's just my opinion. Send me your emails, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. I'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.